sometimes there is a disconnect between the future of the country and policies and our founding principles. So our goal is really to reconnect Hispanics to the founding principles, why we support certain policies, and kind of ground them to that. So it's very exciting. It's going to be an exciting year. We'll have events across the country. We'll obviously work with members of Congress and other influential leaders to celebrate 250 years of freedom. So it's exciting.
That's awesome. I think it's really interesting with the Hispanic community because so often we think of the Hispanic community as being relatively new Americans, and that's certainly true. I mean, the numbers have been going up so much. And so for them to be connected to the founding, I think is in the principles that caused it is really important. I'm always struck though too, like, we sometimes think of the Hispanic community as kind of monolith, and which would be totally wrong. Because, I do different work in New Mexico and Texas, and there's people in those communities. I mean, New Mexico, they're actually descended from being Spanish.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. So, now that we're approaching the end of the year, we're talking to leaders from Americans for Prosperity, LIBRE, Concerned Veterans for America, and our podcast team to discuss what's happened this year, kind of a look back, and then what's coming ahead in the next year in 2026. So we're excited today to have our leader of the LIBRE with us, Sandra Benitez, Executive Director of LIBRE, and has been a frequent guest of ours. We're thrilled to talk about all the great work in the Hispanic community that LIBRE has done, particularly on some of our federal priorities this past year, and then look ahead to talk about some exciting stuff next year. So Sandra, welcome.
Awesome. Thank you, David, for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks. Well, look, we always have new people listening, hopefully, and watching. So maybe tell everybody what LIBRE is and what kind of work you guys do.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are the largest center-right organization that advocates within the Hispanic community. So we advocate for principles of limited government, and our goal is to really empower the Hispanic community with these principles and connect them to members of Congress and really help them make an impact and better their life in the country. So we're very excited. We have 13 state chapters, and we are a true grassroots organization. And then we also work in Washington, D.C. here with members of Congress to ensure that the policies and legislation that are being passed are really going to help the Hispanic community.
That's fabulous. I'm so excited to talk about what the work LIBRE does, because it really is a unique organization, particularly in kind of the pro-liberty, pro-freedom space, because, we saw just in the last presidential election how important the Hispanic community, particularly as a voting bloc, continues to be. It continues to grow, and there's so much vibrancy, in the Hispanic community. So I know that you guys have been doing this work for, going on 15 years, but it just keeps building. It keeps being more and more important. I feel like every year we're like, oh, it's so important. And it really is so important. So we're really happy for what you and your team are doing.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think I mentioned this to you in the past, but I remember being in college and growing up in New York City, and there wasn't an organization like the LIBRE Initiative. So I kind of had to research and kind of, think through everything. And, I realized where my values lied. But that's the exciting thing. LIBRE kind of helps connect people much faster. We are a resource, both from an educational perspective, but then, advocacy, right? So I ended up getting involved in politics through a college internship. It was required for me to graduate. I kind of did it begrudgingly. I didn't want to do it. But then I fell in love with the work, right? So our goal is really to help other Hispanics understand that they can make a difference in their community. So it's really exciting. So
a lot of people would think, I am interested in your story. People would be like, well, New York City, young woman come out of New York City. How's she working for a pro-liberty organization? How did you tell me a little more how that came about?
Yeah, well, once you're exposed to really poor policies, you look for an alternative. So that's one, right? I remember being 10, 11, 12 years old, seeing a lot of Hispanics kind of stuck in poverty, to be honest. And I grew up in poverty as well. And I always wondered, is there a better solution, better option? So I always had a bigger dream for myself. But the core of it is my mother is Christian, and she always instilled values of education. So she immigrated to this country when she was about 15, went and got her bachelor's, her master's degree, and really showed us that was the way out of poverty. So eventually bought her first home in New Jersey. And I kind of try to build on that with my career and my goals for myself. So But the policies that the Democrats were pushing in New York, it really keeps the Hispanic community trapped. So looking for alternatives. And then before you know it, here I am. So
that's awesome. Well, we're happy you're here. That's great.
Yeah.
Another great product from the New York, New Jersey area, myself included.
I know. I love that detail, but now you're in Chicago, so
I know
it's a big change.
I know I always say during COVID, we spent a bunch of time in California because that's what people did during COVID. I guess it was a great situation. Whenever people being like, you grew up in New Jersey, you live in Illinois, and now you're in California. Like, do you just love like low freedom, high tax states? It's like, maybe. I just like to fight behind enemy lines sometimes.
I know. I always get asked, would you ever move back to New York? And I would. I think the only reason family. I love New York and like the museums and the parks, and it's an exciting city to be in. But I think it does change once you start having a family and thinking longer term. So
it's true. Very true. Yeah. All right. So turn into the work LIBRE did. So for all of our organization, the working family tax cuts, the passed in July 4th, were really a lot of the work that we did, and it's so important because basically we didn't want the largest tax cut in history to be pushed down onto American families and businesses. So talk about like why that was important and the role that LIBRE played in that.
Yeah. So from the outset, we knew we had to be involved. We saw when Tax Cut and Jobs Act was first passed in 2017, we saw the positive impact, and particularly in the Hispanic community. But we knew that this was another opportunity. And if we didn't get involved, whether it was through grassroots advocacy or direct lobbying, we knew that generations to come for any American, and in specific Hispanic Americans, would be affected. So we had a few things we wanted to focus on. One, we just got off this intense presidential electoral year last year. I think there was a lot of fatigue, right? A lot of Americans aren't connected to the important bills that are going to be passed or being discussed here in Washington, D.C. So our first step was to connect our community and our chapter states to, hey, there's a big bill that's being discussed. And if we don't get this across the finish line, not only will, the economic outlook for you, but for your children, that will be negatively impacted if we don't get this across the finish line. For a lot of our activists and volunteers and community leaders, they really didn't understand the specifics of the bill. So unlike other organizations, LIBRE really had to spend some time educating our community on like what, the specifics of the bill, the importance of it. And before I go into that, one thing I want to highlight is Hispanic Americans are like any other American, right? Everyone's like, they always ask me, what is the number one issue that Hispanics care about? Or like, how could I reach them? Especially political candidates ask me this. And it's always the economy. And this has remained constant and true. I've been in this industry over a decade now. Every year, whether it's through polling or just even being out in the community and speaking to folks, it's always the economy and pocketbook issues. And I think that stays true for any American. So the minute we were able to get folks in a room and started having those discussions, there was a lot of intrigue on, hey, what can I do to make sure that this passes?
That's great. So, when you're bringing a unique voice to Congress in this case because we're trying to pass it. So do you feel like it hits differently with members of Congress or like bringing that Hispanic voice, advocating for this bill? Kind of what did you hear and what did you experience?
Absolutely. Well, there are a few things that make LIBRE unique. One, we do have the research and the data. We are a very principled organization, so there is a lot of intention and thought that goes behind policy we support. But even bigger than that, we are a true grassroots organization. Yeah. So being able to go to the Hill and say, hey, I know so-and-so or this community leader or this local Hispanic Chamber of Commerce in this state or this city or right in your backyard, and this is the number one issue for them, that is really impactful. There are a lot of members who are new into Congress. They may not even know the Hispanic makeup in their district, right? So our goal is to be a resource to them and be a preferred partner. So we'll go in, we'll meet with them, we'll have that data. And then our sister organization, the LIBRE Institute, also conducts an annual poll. Mm-hmm. And we used, those findings. We poll about 1,200 Hispanics across the country. It's one of the largest polls in the country for the Hispanic community. And what we found every year is that economy is the number one issue. And then this past year, over 93% Hispanics were afraid of a tax hike. So we took that information directly to Congress, and the members were extremely receptive. They understand the contributions that Hispanics make to the country. And something else I was going to say, like, a lot of folks don't realize Hispanic small businesses are the backbone of the country. In terms of contributions to the economy, they contribute over $800 billion annually. Wow. And 1 in 4 new businesses started in the country are Hispanic owned. So again, this bill was extremely important for both Hispanic families, Hispanic small business owners, and just a economic outlook for the country.
Well, I think one of the cool things that LIBRE does, same as AFP and others, but it's the grassroots approach. So
yeah,
you guys talked about going to meeting with members of Congress and educating them, having those meetings, talking to them, through direct lobbying. But then I know, I went to LIBRE events in the States where we're talking about, we're talking to regular people and kind of trying to raise their voices and help them, get activated to try to contact their legislature and put pressure on them. And I thought that was, it seems like such an effective model. And particularly when, I still think that sometimes, the Hispanic voice isn't as loud as it should be for the numbers that we have and the impact that this would have. And so I think the way you guys raise that up is really impactful.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And I really appreciate and love our volunteers, our activists, folks who are engaged with the LIBRE initiative. They are community leaders. And they're doing this, they all have 9-to-5 jobs, they have families, but they're doing this because they care about the future of their country. One of the things we did at the grassroots level in preparation to, lobby and help pass this bill was we had a lot of small grassroots events, whether it was business roundtables, events at Hispanic-owned small businesses. And these were educational events where we spoke about this bill. So we had over 300 of these events across the country leading up to the passage of the bill.
That's a lot.
I know. And, our teams and our staff, they did a tremendous job kind of identifying these opportunities and identifying, the community members and business leaders that needed to be there. And then we took a step further because, to your point, I think that sometimes there's a disconnect. If I live in, a small town or city, I may not see or understand the connection between my work and me advocating and my member of Congress. So we took a step further and we actually invited members to some of these events. So leading up to the passage, we had about 10 members go to attend different events. And then we also did member teletown halls where they were able to speak about this bill. And then on the communication side, we did draft op-eds. Our members who were in support of this bill also co-wrote some of these op-eds. So when I say we are a grassroots movement, I mean it. And then on top of all of this, to supplement that, we also knocked and made over 300,000 phone calls and knocked on over 300,000 doors, Hispanic in Hispanic community. So it's
awesome.
Exciting.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, that was a big win for the American people, the Hispanic community for sure. Everyone really that our taxes didn't go up, and so many other great things came about in that bill. But turning to this year, this next year, 2026. So we're celebrating America's 250th anniversary.
Yes.
And we're, as an organization, we do a lot of different events. What's LIBRE have planned?
Yeah. So one, we're celebrating as well. I think it's going to be a very inspirational year for the country. Obviously a time, to reflect. But for Hispanic Americans, we believe in the American dream, right? Whether you were born here or you immigrated here. And we believe that the principles of freedom and opportunity are what make this country be more prosperous. And even with the LIBRE Institute poll, over 90% of Hispanics believe that freedom is, the fabric of America, right? So that really runs through. And I think you see it, whether it's a Hispanic opening up a small business or, enrolling their kid in school choice options, the list goes on. So our goal is to do a few things next year. One, we want to inspire other Hispanics to get involved and take, that next one small step to empower, and be a leader in their community. And again, a lot of our volunteers and activists are already doing this work, right? But we want to kind of grow our audience and grow the people we're reaching. So inspiring our community is one, But then we also want to reach new audiences. And our goal is to do that through our educational tools. So the LIBRE Institute, for example, already hosts civics classes, and we plan to expand those. So you might say, why do we need civics classes? They get that in high school. But the median age of Hispanics, we are actually younger than the rest of the country.
Sure.
And what I'm seeing, whether it's on social media or just attending some of these events, is sometimes there is a disconnect between the future of the country and policies and our founding principles. So our goal is really to reconnect Hispanics to the founding principles, why we support certain policies, and kind of ground them to that. So it's very exciting. It's going to be an exciting year. We'll have events across the country. We'll obviously work with members of Congress and other influential leaders to celebrate 250 years of freedom. So it's exciting.
That's awesome. I think it's really interesting with the Hispanic community, because so often we think of the Hispanic community as being relatively new Americans, and that's certainly true. I mean, the numbers have been going up so much. And so for them to be connected to the founding, I think is in the principles that caused it is really important. I'm always struck though too, like, we sometimes think of the Hispanic community as kind of monolith, and which would be totally wrong. Because I do different work in New Mexico and Texas, and there's people in those communities. I mean, New Mexico, they're actually descended from being Spanish.
Yeah.
But there's people who've been there for 3 times as long as my ancestors who came here through Ellis Island, and these are much longer term Americans, and same with Tejanos in Texas and other folks. So I just think there's so much diversity and the diversity of experience, but those founding principles bind us all together as Americans. I would know, obviously in the Hispanic community, but also just as Americans. I think it's such a cool time for us to really focus on like our shared experience, our shared values, as like hopefully a unified country, because so often we're kind of consumed with division. There's a lot of people pushing division.
Yep.
So to have that opportunity to celebrate together, what makes this nation great is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's going to be exciting, and definitely a celebratory year. And, the reality is there is no other country in the world that gives any individuals the type of opportunities we find in this country. And I think that's what's most exciting. And I know I've shared this with you in the past, but like, for example, in college, I did work 3 jobs. And someone might say, oh, that's so unfortunate. But the fact, one, I was able to work, and, I used that experience to advance my career, advance my professional growth. And now I am leading the largest Hispanic organization in the country. So like, there is no other place on earth that you could start off from working multiple jobs, and now you're running one of the largest organizations in the country. So that's due to the opportunity that this country provides, the resources. So Hispanic Americans are grateful, and we're excited to have them join us in the celebration. And to your point about it being a unifying year, we're actually going to engage in events with AFP, CVA. So you will see some tri-branded events, larger scale events in some of our key states. So it's going to be exciting.
That's great. Well, I do love your story because, I know that you started out as one of our organizers, our engagement directors who was doing that hard work that is really the backbone of LIBRE and also of AFP. And so I love that you did that and now are leading the organization. So there's such an authenticity to your experience, and like you really understand what LIBRE is in your core because you've lived and experienced it. So that's going to lead. It makes you well suited, in my opinion, to be one of the leaders who leads LIBRE into next year and beyond. You guys are marking an anniversary of your own. What's that for next year? Yeah,
it's our big Quince. Quince is Spanish for 15-year anniversary. So it's very exciting. Time flies. It's a time of celebration. When I think of 15 years of LIBRE, one, the longevity and the steadiness that this organization has provided in these communities, I've never seen anything like it. There are a lot of Hispanic organizations that either may not be impactful, or even just any organization. It's very difficult to sustain, especially when the backbone of it is a volunteer base or activist base. But LIBRE has actually not only sustained it, but grown, both from a geographic reach, right, in terms of state chapters, but even the impact on the Hill that we've seen the last few years. So it's very exciting for us to kind of reflect back, and more than, what we're doing on the Hill, but like the thousands and thousands of Hispanic American lives that we have changed throughout the years, right? Whether it's hosting business workshops, right? Or, hey, this is how you purchase your first home for Hispanic Americans, or, hey, this is what school choice might mean for you, and this is how you are able to access it, right? So when you think of all the generations of families that we've positively empowered, it is amazing. So we're going to celebrate big next year, and we'll have events throughout the country, obviously, and we'll partner with members of Congress. But none of this would be possible without our donor partners and those who've kind of encouraged us along the way.
Well, if folks want to get involved with LIBRE or learn more about it, what's the best way for them to do that?
BeLibre.org. So that is our website. And on there, you can find all of our resources, our social media links, our blogs. And obviously, if you want to join and be an activist, there are ways and tools to do that. And one thing I want to remind folks, while, door knocking and all these things are important, there are ways that you could get involved even from your home. So you could help us phone bank from home. Mm-hmm. You could write to your member of Congress on specific bills right from your computer or your phone. So there are many ways to get involved. But obviously, we would love to see, if you're interested in LIBRE, we would love to see you attend one of our events or come to one of our field offices and meet your local grassroots engagement director.
That's great. Well, I know from experience, there's a lot of wonderful people working at LIBRE. Yeah. Anyone who's interested, please go and check them out, because it's a fabulous group of people who are doing really important work. And unfortunately, still the Hispanic community, sometimes it's swimming upstream. It's increasingly not so. There's a real alignment of values and vision, I think. But there's a lot of great work that is going to be done. So I'm so excited for the next 15 years for LIBRE, and appreciate your leadership of it and you joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks for all of your work. Reaching audiences through this podcast is always important, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you. So thank you.
Thanks, Sandra. Well, folks, if you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, please like and subscribe to us on either YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.